Alright, so my OA will start now. So there are a couple of parts in the OA. First is the general feedback, second is result, and lastly is the reasons why I think so. For general feedback, I feel like both teams have very good understanding of the debate and they have good constructive arguments, and there are some levels of engagement and responses. So overall, it's pretty clear that they have a decent understanding of the China and African relations to debate this issue, for a bit on areas of improvement for both sides. Both sides can somehow explain the motion a bit better. For example, there are some keywords in the motion, such as net positive or China's engagement, so they can explain a bit more on how does China's engagement looks like in this context, and what is actually the meaning of net positive. For example, in this case, net positive can mean that it's the overall impact, whether the overall impact of China's engagement is beneficial or not. So more visualization can, and like more analysis of the motion can actually benefit the outcome of the debate. So for the result, I think it's an opposition win, and the reasons why I think so is, first, a couple of key clashes. Number one is on growth, right? Because both sides debate on whether China's engagement directly influence or indirectly influence Africa's growth or not. So whether it is true growth or not. This includes long-term and short-term growth. And opposition, they focuses more on how the problem actually truly reflect in society. And they talks about how it's only the outer core. Maybe China will help Africa in the start. But opposition focuses more on deeper analysis, such as they analyze on the interests of both countries, including Africa and China's interests. What are their interests? Mainly they talk about China's interests, which is to maximize profits and to secure the markets. And they also talk about how they actually don't really care if Africa experiences starvation or any other problems, and opposition dives deeper into the debt problem and how it's dangerous for like the overall outcomes for Africa, how they are stuck in the cycle and they are stuck in the control, like under China's control. For proposition, their main case surrounds the fact on development or on the relationship. However, they do make a few assumptions on how they talks about how like Chinese government, they laid the foundation for African countries. Like they are more likely to invest and transform, and they talks about how sometimes a developed countries is unlikely to help underdeveloped countries, but China is the opposite of that. I think more reasons can be incorporated to explain how China is the ideal factors that can potentially aid Africa's growth in the long run. Proposition talks about how there are political ties and how their relationship has proved to be very beneficial. However, they can do more in talking about how this investment looks like, how it directly benefits African countries, the people inside these countries, because most of their argument have been tackled in opposition side, in which they talked about the people do not actually receive real support, rather it's just the outer support, and this growth is very superficial. There's no internal growth, or Africa will forever remain the backbone of China's, and unemployment still exists, which means that there are still flaws in China's engagement, and the net positive means it's the overall impact. So somehow proposition has to prove to us how it actually benefits the overall growth, including sectors, such as the healthcare sectors or the people inside, instead of talking over and over again on the significant changes, the development, or the economy or job opportunities, they can do better by analyzing how it actually looks like. And secondly is on sustainability, in which, of course, on proposition, they do analyze, which means they talked about there are some levels of growth. However, they haven't proved to us how there can be continuous investment or future investment or collaboration. So they can actually give us a visualization on how this continued collaboration looks like, how it benefits the overall sectors, including politics or the way that Africa operates. And for opposition, even though they do prove to us and tackle the key points in proposition, they can also prove how, like, without China, of course they do prove to us some better alternatives. They can also compare more how the US actually receives more transparency, how they will not get Africa into the cycle of continuous debt. So a bit more comparison would actually do them good. So for overall feedbacks, for proposition, they can incorporate more responses in their arguments, try to do a bit more preemption so as to not fall into the cycle of like opposition just rebutted all of their arguments, so they can do more preemption. As for opposition, they can do more comparison at the end and try to engage with some of the benefits that proposition mentioned. So yeah, that's the end for my OA. If there are any question, you can ask.